Hello there, Professor Schuster, and hello there, class. My name is Michael Angelo Wilson, and this will be the beginning of my presentation. Now, here, with my introduction, is my research question, and that is, how do financial difficulties of individuals in the lower income class affect them during stages of handling funerals of significant others? Now, my motivation with this research question is taking a look at the difficulties of stress that individuals in the lower income class face during the stages of a funeral of a significant other. Yes. And that will help me, well, it has and will further help me understand more on how the higher income classes don't come uh, to face the same types of stress and that comes financially in this situation. And from my hypothesis, it is that people in the higher income classes manage funerals. They can manage funerals with less stress. And I say less stress, overall stress, including less financial stress than the others in the lower income class who handle funerals with more stress. Now, one second. Here's the analysis of the literature. And with that, there are some points that I brought in here. And one of them is the economic hardship that individuals in the lower income class have to deal with during the situation. And that can lead to struggles with financial help. And that financial help can um, start off with trying to get help or receiving help from family members or others and people like close friends of uh of the significant other. And even after receiving that help from them, they might still be struggling financially, and that can lead to the next point of them having to receive that financial type of help from bank loans or from funeral insurances. And having those loans mean they would have to end up keeping that in mind that they would have to be paid back. Another point here is how funeral insurance becomes necessary with how I just brought that up. And when it becomes necessary, that means they come to a point where it's become that difficult for those in the lower income class to start off with trying to set up the funerals of a significant other. And also, there are funeral regulations that can be in funeral that are part of funeral homes or cemeteries, and that would require an individual um, to not only well to have the chance or to be able to continue with the burial of a body at a cemetery. Uh, but they would have to do that with funeral service as well, and that can raise the amount of money they would have to have or that they would need to have that handled, and that can bring additional stress. The less expensive way would be if there wasn't that type of regulation and an individual of the lower income class can do it in a less expensive way. And to continue on, funeral service is is also a part of the analysis of the literature. With funeral service, it can depend on the race or the culture or religion of an individual's family, and that service could be more expensive or less expensive depending on that, and that can lead to another financial problem that leads to stress for an individual that is handling the funeral of a significant other. And the next one has to do with uh, burial of the deceased body, also cremation, which would process those deceased bodies into ashes, also mausoleums or mausoleums, and those are the buildings that would have the that are able to maintain the caskets in which the deceased bodies are in, and they would place them in different spots in that same building. There's also direct burial, and with that, that is where those caskets um, are just well, they don't go through the same funeral service, and the bodies get buried without that service. And there are also alternatives for the deceased bodies of significant others, and that can be where that can lead to where caskets aren't buried, but they're just still on, still visual, and those would be at cemeteries. Yes, and there are also the risk of funeral issues, and to point out those risks, that could be that funerals could uh there could be a fraud from funeral insurance, and there can also be misunderstanding documents that are handed to individuals who are handling funerals and trying to manage them and schedule them. And there can also be unfair funeral service. With all that said, that can lead to complaints or lawsuits, which would bring additional stress. And next, I wanted to bring up one second. Yes, next I wanted to bring up the three different, well, the three stages included with funerals, and that is the time prior to a funeral, the process during a funeral, on the day of or the days of a funeral, and the third one is the post stage after a funeral. And with all of those, that can bring stress or stressors to an individual, and those stress and stressors could well, there's a chance they would be just financial stress, and that would add on to the initial amount of financial stress from being in the lower income class while handling a funeral of a significant other. And with this presentation of the well, with the research and the research question, um, it came to me that the qualitative method would be good to use, and that would include interviews with participants of different ages. And there could be someone of a younger age than someone who is older, who might have the same amount of experience or less of an experience or more of an experience. Yes. And there will be questions included, of course, um, where the participants have the ability to respond to every one of them. And to start out, a question would be how many funerals of a significant well, how many funerals of significant others has a participant had to handle and schedule in that type of way? And also, the question would be, were there financial problems during those times with funerals? The next question could be, which stages during a funeral impacted the participant the most? And that would include the three stages that I just mentioned. And then there are also, additional questions that can be asked that can affect that participant is able to answer because it's been part of their experience with funerals, and that would be or their history. Yeah, of course, their personal history, and that would be how many funerals has a participant been at of significant others, of course, and how many of those funerals of significant others have they attended? And another final question that I thought about is um, if a participant believes they went through more stress than others that attended the same funeral of a significant other. And I brought that up because the participant who would be the individual who's handling the funeral would already have had to deal with the stress financially because they are in the lower income class. And even if there were more of the lower income class at the funeral, this participant is the one handling it, um, and processing through that, and having to make sure that it is set up in a correct way. And all that stress could have them think they have more than others. Yes. But that would be included in all of these questions would have responses, would possibly have responses. Yes. I only say that because some questions might not be responded by different participants. Now, to continue, I just wanted to include the variables in this and mention them, of course. The independent variable is the lower income class. One of the dependent variables is financial difficulties. Another dependent variable is experience with funerals. And another dependent variable is relationships with the deceased individuals. And, that would be before they passed away, of course. And those would be part of the qualitative method. Yes. But to move on, here are some stress and stressors that individuals in the lower income class in this situation with managing funerals would would have dealt with. And of course, there's the financial impact, and that is stress for them, but can also be thought about like as a stressor. And I say that because there is the financial impact to themselves and how that can also impact um, their own family or their situation with housing, or can add on to the stress or struggle with payments that have to be made or bills and possibly more things. Yes. Another point here is the emotional impact of losing a significant other. And I add on to that because it's a secondary stressor during the process, and it can make it harder to deal with the with financial stress for those individuals. A third one here in this slide is the lack of coping availability, and those individuals would be able to cope with would possibly be able to cope with family members or close family members or close friends, you know, after their significant other passing away. However, if that doesn't work the best for them, there's a chance that they decide to look for another coping resources that requires payment, and that would add to the use of their finance going towards that. And that could also add more stress because they would like tell themselves they require that type of coping resources. And in that case, it would be necessary for themselves when it comes to recovery in a type of way, which is important during that situation of losing a significant other. Sorry about that. And that leads on to the final slide, which brings up a discussion that is related to my research question. And of course, just to bring that up for the discussion one more time, my research question is, how do financial difficulties of individuals in the lower income class affect them during stages of handling funerals of significant others? Now back to the discussion. There is a possibility of results. And one might be that some questions weren't answered due to personal reasons or other reasons from participants in that. And those participants will be the individuals in the lower income class that were handling the funerals of significant others. And those questions that weren't answered would be pointed out. Also, some of the results could lead to knowing that a person knowing that they're going to stay in the lower income class for a longer period of time than they previously thought about, before um, it started with a significant other passing away. And that could determine their future, which could be another secondary stressor because thinking about a future could come for individuals that can happen in the post stage of a funeral. So that's why I mentioned that there are three stages with that. And also to point out another possibility from results in this presentation that I went through. Financial problems can even be raised or increased if it comes to another certain time, or there is another significant other passing away after that, and they would be responsible in managing and handling that funeral as well. And then there will be um, the same stages they have to go through financially, and that can just add on to the stress, and it would be harder for them. And that would also be lead up to that can also lead up to them limiting their time that they have personally for themselves, and you know not having as much free time as they had beforehand. And yes, that can also you know have them having to take a step back from friendships that they had in the past with family members or others too, which is more stress and can affect them mentally as well. So, with that being said, to finish up here, there's also the conclusion that people in the higher income class would have less stress from the financial struggles from handling a funeral of a significant other, and that gives those individuals more of a chance of scheduling and handling the funerals in the way that's best for them. However, for the individuals in the lower income class, they have more stress that they have to deal with financially during the process of handling the funeral of a significant other. Yes. And that brings me to my future research suggestion. And that would help out the individuals in the lower class who would be able to not deal with as much financial stress, and they would have less mental health stress as well, which would be important during the time where they have to handle a funeral of significant others after they pass away. And that would be possible if there were more grants that were able to be received from those lower income class individuals. And those grants would be for specifically beneficial for them when it comes to funeral services. Yes. So that is something that can be available, and that's why it's a future research suggestion. And just to include, you know, that would help that would allow those individuals of a lower income class to avoid having to rely on funeral insurances, or also certain loans from banks, or even loans from others that wanted to help them out. And that can also help others that wanted to help out initially with the funeral, to help out those individuals with the funeral of a significant other, um, that can have their stress, lower too. So overall, that would help out the individual, and others that care about the loved one who passed away, the significant other who passed away. So, yes, I believe that is a good future research suggestion that is related to this research question. And now, with all that being said, I wanted to say that everything in my presentation that I covered has to do with how individuals in the lower income class have to deal with a lot of financial stress um, while managing and handling a funeral of those significant others. And just to add on quickly, I appreciate any time and attention that was on my presentation of now. And I hope everyone has a peaceful rest of the day, evening, and night. Yes. Blessings. Thank you again.